Welcome back to movies. Recap: King Love violently grabs Princess Morgan by the neck and pins her against a wall, could then whips off her dress in front of all the soldiers and tries to dominate her because she just accused him of being a lazy god princess. Morgan doesn't back down as she swings her hits and keeps pressuring him if he has that guts to do it. But as the soldiers sneak her and stare at her with lewd looks, the King Lot suddenly drags Morgan away by her hair because he has a more brutal punishment for King Love. The entire Moor consents to a stick and leaves her in the middle of the wasteland. Actually, he knew that Morgan had seduced him into an alliance in order to use him to eliminate keen others, illegitimate son, so that she could ascend to the throne with little effort. However, Kinlaw believes that Morgan has failed to recognize the nature of their alliance and with the true power lies. So he dropped her off in the middle of nowhere for a night of reflection. If she's lucky enough not to be in by the wolves, she'll still have a chance to work with him. As the night wears on a mysterious Mitch Roads, more surroundings, Morgan looks around rarely, but realizes that it's not the wolves, but the devil she's been trading witchcraft with. It's a heifer. Although the devil constantly murmurs, he is wrong to tour. Morgan has no idea who the devil is pointing at. Fortunately, at least he makes it to the night. Under the devil's protection, the next morning, King Love weaks or up by stroking her cheek. He expects Morgan and his ally to be more disciplined after a night of punishment, since the sword of the gods has been pulled out by Arthur. There is no point for him to keep our Arthur $5, to leave the room soaking like decides to attack Other. Tonight, on the other hand, Other, who has been in a coma for a day and night, finally wakes up. He still can't believe he actually Lee True. The sword of the gods, the we still a little weak Merlin, insists on organizing Arthur's coronation tonight. Hundreds of warriors have come to see, or the pool of the sword of the gods, and make him King. Morgan arrives at the castle on horseback, but she's here to send a message. Morgan tells Merlin about Chemo. It's planned to attack tonight, and she leaves with a mess. Each wishing them could look so Merlin prepares for battle and make sure the coronation goes off without a hitch. I present to you the or. And so he was, that Arthur was crowned, watched and cheered by the crowd. And then Nader's proclamation is king. He would not fail to fulfill the high expectations of those pressed and would rule as people in a new way. Also then appointed his brother Aki as marshal and his foster father, and Savior lent his royal guard. I am on the Pendragon, and I am proud to be okay after the king's coronation. The crowd was in the midst of a joyous party. It was then there saw the blonde girl who had captivated him. So he went up to her to continue the beautiful encounter that had been interrupted the last time he finally learned surname Kinevere. The two of them, a nice conversation. And then they went to the deer, or as by the sea, in the spirit of the drink. Can have you look down at the ocean, and Esty, would it kill me to jump from here? Next thing you know, Arthur is on the fence. Find out ho. Eddie, why too? While the two of them are having a good time, the ambience is suddenly interrupted by the arrival of Linters. The guard they wanted to introduce kind of viewer to Linters. Bai was embarrassed. Not to know that they knew each other. This truth definitely get Other hard. Although Arthur tried to fake a smile to congratulate them on their engagement. He was still upset when he saw their intimate behavior and had to leave while he is still in the sadness of his last love. He realizes that the enemy is already entered, the party in disguise. The battle begins in an instant. Merlin immediately had Other evacuated King Lot, who wanted to take Arthur's life, came after him. Arthur's adoptive father immediately rushed out to avenge the murder of his wife. Obviously, the two of them are very different in terms of fighting strength. The Aird and Keen Lot even put down his sword and stepbrothers foster for, either with a spirit instead team. I thought that the killing was over. But Arthur's father was able to endure the pain of the spear, penetrating his abdomen and approach Keen Lot a little bit. Then he took out the dagger he had hidden on his body, and die with keyboard, keen Lot, never thought that he would die in such an ungrateful way, Arthur's adopted father of Vincey's wife's death, and paved the way for Arthur with his life and woman, walks into the jungle late at night, looking for the devil she's been trading with. She addresses and tells the devil that she needs more. Not long ago King Lot, who was allied with Princess Morgan, for the From was killed, putting Morgan's ambitious plans on hold. Morgan can only watch as Arthur, the illegitimate son of the former king, takes the throne. She so desperately wants Morgan, and Arthur are half-siblings, in fact Arthur, not wanting to antagonize his sister, suggested that he could share the throne with her men are not my way to this after leaving Camelot Castle. Morgan went deep into the woods to continue his dealings with the devil. It's always calm before the storm. The biggest blower there had to face was the fact that his beloved interview would be Mary in his garden. And to see 3 days of years' expectations of this engagement, which he has had since she was a child, or shaken when she meets King Arthur. The wedding, which is to be held in the castle, is a bit awkward for both of them. Just more consents are made to invite Arthur to her castle for dinner. Merlin was still trying to figure out what Morgan was up to, but an unhappy Arthur didn't hesitate to say yes. Merlin has no choice but to accompany him, when their two of them are right at the castle. Morgan is waiting in full costume. Thank you, Morgan. Sudden change of attitude. Subservience was a surprise to both of them. Merlin was never convinced that she was sincere, and request for peace. Morgan prepares a sumptuous dinner, but Merlin is too cautious to eat, so Morgan tastes other soup first, and so the dinner went on in such a pleasant atmosphere. After the dinner, Arthur fell asleep in Morgan's castle. Morgan came to visit him in his room late at night. The two of them were now as closest siblings can be without hatred. But this time, Morgan approached him with a purpose. On this surface she said she wanted to get to know her brother and meet Arthur. Drop his defenses, she pretended to accidentally cut either chest when she was about to wipe him. A rain was then staying with Arthur's blood, and she left the road satisfied. Morning was still standing in the hall, so Morgan invited him for a drink. But after a couple of drinks, Merlin started to lose consciousness when he realizes that something is wrong. It's too late, because Morgan is already sitting on top of him. Merlin tried his best to stay awake, holding Morgan's head in his hands. He suddenly and unexpectedly realized that it was she. You had poisoned Keen Other, because the little girl who had disguised herself when Morgan poisoned him was the same girl she had been when she was young. However, the drug in the wine had already taken full effect, causing Merlin to fall heavily to the ground. When he awoke up again, he found himself tied to the bed by Morgan, collected Merlin's hair and nails, and began some evil rituals when he came to his senses, more than accused Morgan of having poisoned her father. But Morgan said that the man was not where the have-been, or Father Merlin knew that Morgan was deeply hurt, and kindly reminded her of that the sorcery she was using would not make her strong, but would cost her dearly. But Morgan, determined to take beggar from, doesn't listen. What Merlin doesn't know is that after his poisoning last night, a distraught Arthur has left the castle. After dreaming of Guinevere again, he decides to confess his innermost feelings to the interview on the night of her wedding. The bride secretly gets up and take the deer's blood she hid under the bed and paws on the white sheets. The blood was enough to fool the others. Can of year letters were childhood sweethearts, be dropped since childhood. But then the handsome king, Arthur, burst into Guine of Year's world, the men on the beach, and fell in love at first sight. Arthur was dismayed to learn that Guinevere was bitter old, but his love for Guinevere was uncontrollable. So he snuck into Guinevere's bed on the morning of the wedding. You eat the beach din of Year, after much internal struggle, finally showed up at the beach a short time later. The first the North have said, when he saw her, was to ask interviewer and not to marry Linters. He believed that an unspeakable love had sprung up between them both on the beach, where they had first met. and at the ball that night at the king's coronation. Yet if you couldn't deny the love boat was adamant that it too late don't.
He was neat. There's a complete stranger crisis was decided that he can order me about other questions. Why she came to this beach, if she didn't have the same feelings for him? Because you want this? To the two of them eventually came close to each other and kissed. They gave themselves to each other, body and so on. Their beach could have. You have been told, Arthur, that after this one moment, them affair was over, and that it would remain a secret in their hearts. After all, she chose to remain married to her childhood sweetheart. Lent S on the way back, they met a deer that had been shot by a narrow can of yours immediately filled a wine back with 2 years' blood for a wedding night back at the chateau. The atmosphere was one of wedding joy. Arthur was at a loss as to how to face a saviour and test the groom of the evening linters, even as to Arthur Pro formed the wedding ceremony for him, and Arthur could only agree awkwardly and then to the sound of a beautiful song. The bride, accompanied by her father, slowly entered the room. Can of your past, Arthur, and came to the group. Arthur could only bear the pain in his heart and perform the marriage ceremony for the newlyweds. Ladies' rings, Stanford, was a symbol of your unity and fidelity. Can grow old together, knowing the truth. I'm dying. King Love violently grabs Princess Morgan by the neck, and pains are against a wall, could then whips off her, dressed in front of all the soldiers, and tries to dominate her, because she just accused him of being a lazy-got princess. Morgan doesn't back down as she swings her. Please subscribe to this channel, and thanks for watching.